Pá.
Também é,
Sabes,
também é.
o meu problema quando me ponho com vídeo é que vejo as rugas e essas cenas. Isto é terrível.
Olha, outra coisa
Isto
que
é
nós estamos todos
terrível.
fartos, todos. Ah, peraí. We're already live?
Oops.
Oh,
No.
sorry,
No? We're just kidding.
we're live. Yeah.
Joking.
So,
Yes.
hi everyone. Welcome to another webinar by Landing.Jobs. This time, how to handle cultural differences when working remote. With us, we have Lara Prosper. Lara Prosper is Global Director of Learning and Development at Microsoft. She has huge experience in these matters regarding cultural differences and how to handle with them when working with distributed teams from very different places of the world. But I'll let the presentation show her. In the meantime, just a couple of recommendations. Please, you have some polls open down there in the screen, somewhere like that. Please answer the polls. It will give us some insight so that we can also direct the conversation based on those topics. And please, you have also the ask a question where if you have concrete questions, please put them there and we'll try to answer them as the webinar goes on. And there's the chat. Please, if you can let us know where you are, who you are, any questions, any comments, stupid things, intelligent things, everything counts, okay? We'll try not to make this too monotonous, so we'll be talking a bit, me and Lara, but we'll go back and forth towards the audience, so your participation is also fundamental for this to be as interesting as possible. What I really suggest all of you guys that are and girls that are attending this webinar is please let's use Lara's knowledge and expertise on this to clarify doubts, to exchange points of view. Let's make this as participative as possible. Lara, welcome.
Thanks.
Just a disclaimer, me and Lara are very close friends, so there's this intimacy that's going on, obviously, but we'll try to make it as professional as possible, but not too much. But Lara, please present yourself to the audience.
Well, I let me start. So, Lara, based out of Lisbon, Portuguese, born and raised in Lisbon, but my parents are from Mozambique, fourth generation. My parents live now in the UK, so I kind of I'm the only person in my country in my hometown from my family, and I was used to multicultural environments since very early in my life. First and foremost, because my parents came to Portugal as refugees when my mother was pregnant, and I was born 2 months later. So my father is grandson of Italians. My mother is a granddaughter of Spanish and English. Sorry, there are too many cultures in the
Branches, yeah.
family. Yeah, lots of branches. That's why I have freckles and I used to have black hair. Now I have gray hair. So multicultural for me was something that I felt since the beginning. But professionally speaking, so I studied at IST as Pedro. We never met there because
Yeah.
I'm a physics engineer, and girls from physics engineer usually they stay in a corner and they don't get along with the guys from computer science. I ended up married to one, but I studied physics. I did my whole career on the IT world, so I did the full spectrum. So from coding, yes, I do code still every now and then. I was a system engineer, then I moved to project management. I worked on the space industry for a while. Then someone named Pedro Moura, you may have heard about him, hired me to work with him at Nova Baz, and we had several challenges and interesting moments together. And it was more or less in the same months when you left Nova Baz. I
Yeah.
left Nova Baz to join Microsoft. I moved into a pure people manager role. So I get out of business and projects, and I was still leading an IT team based in Portugal, serving customers all around Europe and African countries with Portuguese-speaking languages. And after 2 years, more or less, I have decided to pursue a dream that was to create an academy program for young people at Microsoft to bring new talent in, to train them from the scratch out of college till becoming probably my own bosses if they are successful enough. And I ended up in the learning and development world. With that, so started in Portugal, moved into EMEA role, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Suddenly, I was also managing some projects and some virtual teams in Americas, in India, in Asia. Back in 2017, I got my first global role. And since 2020, I lead a team based out of 6 countries. So I have my most Eastern team direct based out of Shanghai. And the last one is in Costa Rica. So between Fish is his name and Sharon is her name, I have 14 hours difference. So if you ask, how is my day? How do we manage team meetings? And so it's quite funny. And we are very creative. And we use technology like crazy because we need to use technology a lot. So in a nutshell, oh, and on top of that, so physics, engineering, post-graduation and systems, information systems and coding and all that stuff, also in IST. And recently I also decided to do an executive master in positive psychology. So this is to care of people and to put happiness and well-being of the employees and the teams. I'm also a chief happiness officer certified. So you can check with my team on LinkedIn if they're really happy or not. But they seem to be. And working in multicultural events is what really drives me. So in the last years of my career, I had a couple of opportunities to come back to Portugal. And that is the checkbox that I need to check to accept a job, is we need to have more than one citizenship in the team, because it's so boring if we're just having pastéis de nata and café and no. So yeah, this is me in 2 minutes, I guess, or 3.
Great, Lara. Great presentation. Very thorough. Now let's start rolling the show. So what would you say, just to begin the conversation with, that according to your experience and all the things that you have lived up until now and all the training that you also have had in these matters, are the biggest challenges when we think about, mostly distributed teams working remotely with people from different geographies, different cultures, because in my perspective, you have this kind of Maslow pyramid where, okay, you have we can work together operationally, but then you go and you climb it until, okay, we are really happy to be working together, even though we are culturally and geographically and in terms of time zones, completely apart. And I believe that most of the companies follow this path from, okay, I have a distributed team, I can get them to work together until, okay, no one considers anymore not working in this kind of environments. How do you see this kind of maturity level, the evolution across these stages?
Well, we are celebrating this month the first year of my full team being in place. And we're taking this to reflect. So there are some models about team performance where you're not storming, norming, performing, right, has a team. And the first thing is to I agree. I like the Maslow pyramid, because indeed we start by the basics, and the basics are usually, how do we deal with different time zones? That's the first one. Even if it is just 1 or 2 hours, that's enough for someone being hit at lunchtime, or to have to wake up very early and then impact with the time that, if you have kids, what the time that kids go to school. So even if just the time zone is the issue, it's still an issue. And that's the first one, right? So we need to be respectful of each other's time. We need to be aware of others people's commitments with their personal lives. So for instance, if someone likes to go to the gym on at 7 a.m., it's important to know all these small details, because you don't have the chance, has a manager, has a peer, to talk with someone in a cafeteria just to get this information out. So you need to do it in a little bit more formal way. You need to force some conversations to get this information. Then you move to the next stage, right? So first you take this one, logistics, let's put it like this. Then
And
you
do
need
you, just in that
Mhm.
stage, Lara, sorry to interrupt, but for example, one of the things that is always talked about, it's okay. The best way to overcome time zone is to create the kind of organization in terms of work processes that can work as sync as possible, right? What do you
Yeah,
think about that? Then
yeah,
we'll go to the other stage, okay?
yeah. So this async is interesting, right? Because we talk a lot about empathy and the importance of relationships, and you don't build relationship asynchronously, right? So you need to be in touch with people. You need to talk with people to build relationships. No one builds a relationship, at least a strong one and a trustful one, by email or just chatting. So at a certain point, you need to communicate and to engage, emotionally engage, even if not presential, but you need to engage. So. Uh, what I usually do with my teams is to agree what is important enough to be treated synchronously and what can be owned by each of us individual at our own rhythm. So for instance, a couple of months back, in the beginning of us as a team, this almost 1 year ago, at a certain point, we needed to have an offsite and to debate our strategy. And that's brainstorming. In brainstorming, when someone is at 10 p.m. and someone is at 8 p.m., it's quite hard, right? So for instance, what we did instead of being 3, 4, 5 hours, what we did was we cut it the offsite in chunks. And we had for each session maximum 2 hours because that's at as much as you can be if you're outside of your most performant hours. And we had pre-readings for the session, so that was asynchronous. We had post readings and post activities, and we just left the meat and source of, and sorry if there are any vegetarians in the group, but we just left the core to be discussed all together. So this is usually, it's you learn how to prioritize and you learn how what is important, what can I easily go through an email and do it, and what is easier if I just speak with someone, I chat, and then I can ring and we solve.
Yeah, but
um
that prioritization that you're talking about, well, from my experience, it's hard for an organization that usually works, synchronously all the time, to be able to adapt itself, and it's pretty much a managerial topic in the sense of okay, the leadership needs in some way to be able to define and to instill this kind of thought, this kind of processes for people to be able to lead and to assess what is going on, right? I think that in terms of maturity, the organizations might not be completely well on this.
yeah, so this is taking me to my second level. That is, we need to agree kind of housekeeping rules. So what are the team agreements? Right now it's there's a lot. If you Google team agreements, there's a lot of trainings on team agreements and how to do it. So for me, that's after the logistics, that's the next stage, because this is where you establish the commitments between the team and you define, for instance, how you prioritize. And the prioritization in a team that works in different time zones and remotely, even if it is in the same time zone but remotely, you need to
Yeah.
be much more autonomous and independent on your decisions. That means that you need to be informed, you need to be aware, and you need to be accountable for the decisions you make. So for that to happen, as a manager, you are obliged to create the psychological safety for people to make decisions and not being aware of, oh, I did that decision on behalf of my manager, but now my manager is not backing up me. So the more the freedom you give to your team member, the more the responsibility, but also more the need that he or she needs in case something goes wrong. And so this psychological safety after the logistics, for me, the psychological safety is the second level that we need to create to work remote. Because in more traditional environments, the psychological safety is built by talking, by reading body language, getting comfortable with, and it's something that usually comes naturally to a relationship. And when we are remote, We need to force that. We need to force that as managers, but also the more senior members of the team, they have responsibilities on how to lead with the youngest. Because I was in a manager training a couple of weeks back, and most of the managers there, they have all their teams in the same time zone or 1-2 hours away, 3 hours maximum. And one of the questions that we were working was, who is your go-to person in your team? And they all had person A, person B, person C. And my answer was, it depends on the time of the day. And they looked kind of, some videos were, what do you mean by that? Well, I have this range of time zones, and instead of having the focal point in one person, I had to know them in detail. I couldn't just look to them and say, oh, this is my go-to person, so I don't need to know the other so much in detail. So I did a strengths assessment with them. So I know what are the key strengths of each of them. And depending on the time of the day, if I need something for a team member, I know I have more or less the strengths split it across the different time zones. So I have, for instance, 3 analyticals and 3 creatives, and I just go to the go-to person on that time zone, on that area of competence that I'm looking for. So I don't have one. And that is also good because it gives you it's much more balanced, and you don't have the favorites and the proteges. So it solves lots of questions if you do this.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. And tell me something, going more specifically, leaving a bit the time zone part and answering the real cultural differences, because this
Ooh.
is mostly about. So that's the thing, right? Okay, you have
Yeah,
people from Portugal, you have people from China, you have people from Romania, right?
yeah,
I don't know if you
yeah.
have also any connection to Africa,
India,
for
Costa
example,
Rica.
India, but
No,
it's a
Africa
lot.
not now,
Not yet.
but not yet. Well, yeah, but I did in the past also Middle East, what is quite
Yeah.
different. So it's important to like in so many other things in life, do not assume. That's the first thing. Just because you're a female, you can't assume that all the females in the Middle East, they wear sari and they cover their heads or something like that. So, or you can't assume that, for instance, all your Indian colleagues are Hindus and they go for celebrate Diwali. So, for instance, in my team, when we wish Merry Christmas, we say Merry Christmas to the ones that celebrate it. Okay, so it's not assuming that everyone celebrates Christmas. Then most of the countries they celebrate Christmas anyway, but we have this disclaimer. So the first thing is do not assume. The other one is do not generalize, because if you go to a country, let's bring India in. It's probably the one that is most common for people to know. We know that from cultural dimensions point of view, in India, we have a very hierarchical society. But then what I have been learning, and this you can learn a little bit on the books, but you can learn much more if you talk with people and if you make questions. There are strong cultural differences from north to south. For instance, most of the North Indians, they have impact from events, recent events, because it was just a few decades ago, of Kashmir and
Yeah.
Bangladesh and
Kardashian.
Pakistan. If you ask an Indian guy from the south, from Bangalore, for instance, where we have lots of IT people, probably they are not so aware, but they know all the story behind the conflict in Sri Lanka and how that affects their way of living. So even in the same country, and when we talk about countries like India or China,
It's for
gosh,
continents.
they're continents. So do not assume, and then don't make it generic. That's the second one. The third one is take into consideration that despite the cultural dimensions that can be a little bit stronger because of the environment where they live, people have their own personalities. And that means a lot, because you can have a Portuguese that culturally are always welcoming and very keen to help others, but you can have a Portuguese that is a jerk, and it's a matter of, and I know a few, right? So it's not a matter of culture, right? It's just his personality. So so culture to understand culture, um I what I have been learning is, no, visiting the countries is, it's a plus. If you have the opportunity, if you visit a country and you do it not from the tourist eyes, but for instance, if you're going on a business meeting and you try to be with your teammates and understand how do they work, how do they live, visit the office there, that's super important. So you understand how things happen in real, right? Not in the hotel, the pool, and the museum, but this is good. If you can't do that because you're not traveling, just reserve time during your engagements with people from their countries to know them. Reserve 10 minutes. You have 1 hour meeting to talk about whatever, and hopefully you'll have an agenda because you take care and you're not following the Portuguese cultural pattern. So you have an agenda for the meeting, and you reserve the first 10 minutes just to ice break and use that to learn from others.
But from one thing that it's also complementary to what you were saying is that obviously nothing replaces the experience, the direct experience among other people's cultures and countries and business, leisure situations, etc. But there's a lot of, well, literature regarding cultural differences, not not necessarily just on business, but for example, I'm remembering a book I read some time ago. It was The Culture Map by Erin Meyer, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
which it's very interesting because what I felt when I read it was that, okay, I could have learned this, but this gives me a lot more basis and insight that I can then go and test for real with people from different cultures and across a set of dimensions, like the communication style, or if people are explicit or implicit in what they say, the decision, if it's more collaborative, if it's more individual, these kind of things that most of the times are very subtle and we don't think about them when we live and we work in one same single context, can help, I don't know, prepare someone to handle better those cultural differences, giving a bit more, I don't know, a paradigm view in terms of the basis. For example, I'm an engineer, right? As you are. So if someone gives me, okay, you should analyze that problem by these dimensions, great.
yeah. I think that I've read it's like the Bible when we talk about corporate cultures and um, so yes, I think my engineer answer is yes. It's super important to be aware that these differences exist, and for instance, we will not, communication styles are probably the ones that are easier to understand, but because we communicate. But for instance, one of the dimensions that Erin works is the perception of time. And that is, unless you're looking intentionally to what do you mean when you say, wait a moment, or what do you mean when you say, I will call you back tomorrow, you'll never pay attention to that because you have built in that tomorrow is tomorrow at 12 because usually that's the time that I call you. So this is the assumption, right? And we can't do this. So this kind of literature, so this is a great book. The Culture Code is also a great book with good examples. So there are plenty of it. What I like to challenge is do some readings and then try to question what you see and what you observe, because
Yeah.
not all Chinese are quiet, not all Indians are humble, not all Portuguese are kind. So and this is important. There is another book that I've read recently that brings a new, not sure if new, but at least a different perspective to the cultural thing. That is The Multicultural Mind. And I can share then in the Q&A, I can share the link. The multicultural mind is slightly different from the cultures in the way that Erin Meyer analyzes it, because the multicultural mind is more of cultural intelligence. The same way that you speak about emotional intelligence, it's about the cultural intelligence. So, how can you be more aware, and can you adjust and adapt yourself to live in multicultural environments? And there are interesting stories on multicultural minds, because if you look to some of the most renowned leaders of big companies, if you look to their past, most of them had lived in different countries because their parents were traveling. Um, they had, usually it happens during youth, not during childhood, and this prepares them to have this cultural flexibility, because when they were very young and they moved for a different country, they had to adapt to survive, right? If you're a teenager, you need to be very adaptable, you need to make friends, you need to create relationships. So that's when it's more intense, this cultural adaptability. Multicultural minds, yes, yeah, it's that one. Thanks, Christina. And so this is interesting, because it's there are some studies that shows the real impact of living in different cultures can have. But now you may ask, okay, so I was not blessed with that fortune of traveling around with my parents when I was young. Can I become a multicultural mind? Can I be successful? Can I be creative? And the answer is yes. And this book is great on telling the structure how you can train to be multicultural. And it's more or less, it starts by what I said on the do not assume, and observe and ask, and then be open to experience the culture of others with no judgment. And the no judgment piece is
It's not easy
it's not easy. It's
for
usually
anyone.
yeah, the issues between the clashes between cultures, it's because there is a judgment intrinsic, right? So the trick is, if for instance, and I'll give the example of women in certain cultures to need to be covered. If I go to a country like that, I don't judge. They have a reason to do that. I accept. And in that culture, I I behave like I should. Not because someone is telling me you need to, because I'm being respectful with other cultures.
You're the
And
guest, right?
yeah, and I'm not judging. And this is um, when we have teams, and I know that now Landing.Jobs, you have people in different places. When you have a dominant culture, you may have a risk of having that dominant culture kind of, oh, the others will tentatively behave
Mhm.
like the dominant culture because they want to be part of the group. They want to belong to the tribe.
Yeah.
And this is where we lose this multicultural activity. So
Yeah, well, but sometimes you also can have the other way around, is that adapting to each specific culture might create a mayhem that's unmanageable, right? So I think that what you're meaning regarding multiculturality in a team such as the ones that we are discussing here must be something that is observed or observable by every team member, and I believe that that should be one of the main things that you assess when you are hiring someone for a team. For example, it's
yeah,
that personality trait, because if we have somebody which is so, single-minded, that it will be, if not impossible, very difficult to really be tolerant, to really be non-judgmental regarding other people's cultures and behaviors. It probably can be one person that ruins the whole mood of the team, right?
yeah. Well, in my team, if I was to hire per cultural alignment, I was doomed. Okay, so so that was not even a point. But I had at a certain point when I was planning it, I said, okay, what makes a team strong? What makes a team stable, yet with the flexibility to be successful and creative? And my experience tells me that the values is the glue that allows the culture to be lived. So when I was hiring for my team, I was always looking for a common set of values. And I have very different personalities. I have very different cultures. I have the introverts, I have the extroverts. I have a little bit of everything. I have young people, not so young. I have blacks, whites, Chinese. So we also have the full palette. It's cool. And we have all the lovely accents. So a meeting with us, it's just fun. You know, it's like a dish
Babel.
full of color because we have, even I put my Portuguese accent when I'm
Yeah.
in a team meeting just to make make the mark. And but if you go to the essence of the team, we all live by the same values. Our core values are the same.
And what would be your advice for someone who's minding also that value, that base values thing? Because are you able to assess that properly? What are the tools and the tips that you can give regarding this?
Ooh. Um,
Yeah, it's an odd question, I know.
it comes with age, wrinkles, and white hair. That's
Yeah, we're all in the same club.
yeah, yeah. You know, so it's um, it's something. Values is something that is quite intrinsic, right? And for many years in my life, I didn't have any clue what were my core values. I didn't because I was not there. I was enjoying life, you know. Um, but if you want to keep it simple, is just look around you and see the kind of people that energizes you, even if they're different, right? They can be challenging, but they energizes you, and the kind of people that drain all your energy, right? I like to put it like this, probably to simplify, but I do that a lot of, okay, I can't be next to that person because that person drains my energy. And this is something quite emotional. It's completely non-rational. We all have people that we like to get along with, and there are people that you even say, well, they haven't done me anything that could hurt me, but I don't know. There's something about that person that I really don't like. And as the time goes, and you do some introspection, and you go to the values and you start analyzing the values, and you have a list of values. There are some cool games that we can do with tips and tricks. I did something like that with a team that requested me. There is online some value cards. I will, if someone can try, if Christina can help us to look. So it's value cards, and you can make a game. You can test what are the values, and you realize that usually a team that is performing and that is working quite well is a team where the core values are the same. So it's something that you don't know by heart unless you go and search for it.
I,
And
I would say that that's a lot like relationships, right? It's a bit the same. People can be very different, but you have to have something to connect in the
yeah,
bottom of it all. And tell me something which is also very in following the part regarding hiring, bringing people to the team with the same set of core values as a way to allow the a multicultural. Well, here's my names. Sorry, meninos, preciso que saiam daqui. Okay, please. I have to leave for just 30 seconds in order to change place.
that's the beauty of home office.
It's always a guess. Okay, going to another
Yeah.
place. Okay, sorry, but what I was about to ask you was okay. One of the things that it's one of the big questions about people nowadays in remote working environments. It's the onboarding part. So how do you, especially with distributed teams, remote teams, a lot of times with people that are working for the first time, so other times not, of course, but the onboarding of someone to the team, to the company, it's a fundamental stage for one people to really get on board and know things around and know people and start progressively to be a real part of the team. and then obviously for the company also to assess if this was not a mistake, because sometimes that happens, obviously.
Yeah. So I have a saying on this, because out of my 7 years in the L&D world, 4 of them I was leading the new hire experience program globally for one of our orgs. We had around 66,000 new hires in a year. When COVID hit, so one of my first actions when I took the program, we had lots of remote trainings and remote events, and I moved everything that was regarding onboarding to personal. Oh, we need to do it face to face, blah, blah, blah. And don't ask, you may get it, or the other way around. As soon as I had my program up and running, I hired trainers in different countries to have everything face to face in person. And I had a program in place for probably in September 2019. COVID hit in January 2020.
January, February, yeah.
Yeah, so the first training, the first welcome session that I had to change, I remember, because we already had some cases in China. It was January 31st of 2020, and that was a boom to me, because all the research that I did on the onboarding, how it should be, it was suddenly completely brought down to earth. And in my program, I used to assess the feedback from the new hires at the first week, first month, first 3 months, etc. And I was expecting after COVID, and we had to move everything remote, and we didn't have time to properly convert content or even to train people on how to work remotely with the new hires. So it was, okay, this is what we do in person. We have the tools. Let's move it to remote, and then we will see, right? And because we had to change in just 2 or 3 weeks. And when I started to see the feedback that I was expecting to drop, indeed the feedback went up. And it was S moment, right? What have I done? But it was temporary. After 6 months, it started to drop again. So there is an effect that when we are used to do things traditionally, and then with the big pandemic or with a war right now, if we keep hiring, people will feel grateful for the opportunity. So they will raise you up. But that's not real, in the sense that they are not enjoying the experience. And after we have good results, we went for some interviews and we dissected, and it was terrible. It was frustrating. They took lots of time. So we received many information on that. So we came up with some, it's not solutions, because there is nothing that really brings onboarding real if it is 100% remote. But there are a couple of things. So one of the things is you need to have everything prepared in advance, because if something can go wrong,
it will go wrong.
It will go wrong. And if it is remote, it will go even worse than you can ever imagine. So that was also something that we have learned in the worst way. Everything that you could imagine that would go wrong, it happened. So you need to be prepared for the worst. And I'm thinking about everything regarding processes, equipment, for instance, is a nightmare. How to, in one thing is when you work just in a single country, but just if you need to go through a country where you have customs, for instance, you send a T-shirt. You send a T-shirt because you want to welcome. I don't know. There should be, in Egypt, we should have probably 1,000 T-shirts from Microsoft, because they don't let the T-shirts go in, and the amount that we have to pay in customs is absurd. So these are the kind of things that, unless you go through it, it's not written in the books. Everything can go wrong when you go remote. So you need to be prepared, and you need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Okay. So it's super important if you're working remote, if you're onboarding someone that is pure remote, you need to have someone that is the buddy or the onboarding peer. Okay, so for instance, we have a program of onboarding buddies, and then we felt at a certain point that the onboarding buddies, they were themselves suffering of some, I don't know what to do. So we have onboarding champs. We have a kind of a pyramid because we work at scale where we have the onboarding champs. And the onboarding champs are the ones, they have been in a company for many, many years. They know a lot about a company. They have connections and they support the onboarding buddies to support the new hires. And with the buddies, we try not to force that the buddies communicate regularly with a new hire, but we have playbooks on how you should behave. So how many times should you ping on Teams or Zoom or whatever,
There's a
WhatsApp?
process.
Yeah, it's kind of it's follow the recipe, just go there and do this. We will not be checking if you're doing this or not, but this is how we know that works, because then what we do is we assess, we survey people and we get feedback. It's super important with everything that if you have remote teams, you need to have feedback loops permanently. And the feedback loop can be something a little bit more structured, where you just send a survey. Usually the best way, what we did is it's a pulse survey. So 2 or 3 questions, click, 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 right? So it's death by surveys. And you analyze that data, read the verbatims, always give room for people, for new hires to read, to write down and read the verbatims. I did that for months. I had AI to tell me what were the good comments and the worst comments, but still, I would take it and I was going to read it, and then doing some analysis of trends of what was coming in. For instance, at a certain point, we realized that the equipment was an issue. So what is the mitigation plan for equipment? Well, we have a process in place where we can only order the equipment 2 weeks prior to the start date. That was our process pre-COVID. Guess what? We had to change that with the IT. We have to move it like for 3 months before the hiring date. And then, but we can't do that because when I order an equipment, you need to have a name
But you
for that
assign it
person.
to someone.
Yeah. And I said, well, we do not have a name because we haven't hired yet, but we have a headcount position and we know that we're going to hire. So we need to change the process. So this is the nitty gritty details of when you move to remote, you will need, it's not just moving to remote and it's not just the employee. So the overall structure, the back office needs to adjust to all the small details. But keep connection, the buddies. And the managers, there is a company, one of these days I've met one of the founders, PwC, PHC, not PwC, PHC. And they have mandatory one-on-ones between managers and employees. And I was, mandatory? Whoa. Why? Because they don't have a culture to engage with their employees regularly. So for instance, this is something that, they have to force it. And for new hires, for instance, we did the same kind of a prescription for the manager. And even guidance. In the first day, you should take him to have a coffee. If you are doing this remote, just invite for a virtual coffee and bring your coffee with you. So to make it, and we have prescriptions, and then we also run meetings with the managers and the buddies to understand how do they feel, and we also survey them. It's super important to understand how things going. If you don't know what's going on, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think that communication is key, that, and all those feedback loops that you talked about. I think that these probably are the most important thing. The question sometimes, I would say, is for you to understand the weaker points of the organization, either being them onboarding buddies or being them line managers, because it's not only about the people that enter, it's also about the people that are already in the organization, right? In that sense, according to my experience, obviously what I always try to do is to hire people for middle positions and for people that will help on onboarding, that I know that they are more prone to those kind of tasks. Because not everyone, it's so good an onboarding buddy as some other people. But it's also important well, to identify the soft spots in the organization, to also make some work on that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because one of the things that I was talking in the previous meeting, not because of onboarding buddies, but because of subject matter experts that
Mhm.
should ask as mentors, I was chatting with my manager about it. And one of the things that we want to make is to have a kind of a Uber style rating where the mentee rates the mentor and the mentor rates the mentee. And if you have this rating going in, you will know who are the ones that you will probably remove from mentoring positions or budding positions. And it's not that they are not good performers.
Yeah,
Okay, they can be great, they can be amazing, but they don't fit to have a buddy role or to have a mentoring role, right? It's not their way. So it's very important to detach this stretch assignment from their performance, because sometimes is, oh, you need to be great, blah blah blah, and you need to be a great mentor.
it's the unicorn.
Not everyone. Yeah, yeah, you need to be green with something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
listen,
measure, measure, measure.
yeah,
Hmm.
we have a question in the poll. We have three questions, but I think that only one of those is really a question. And it has to do with something that's very, very relevant. I remember a story that I think everyone kind of that's in the remote culture or cultural thing sees, that it's one plane from the South Korean airlines that has crashed, and when they went to understand why, it was the co-pilot that clearly saw that the pilot was doing a mistake, and he tried to call the attention in a South
Hmm.
Korean way, which is very subtle, right? Because hierarchy
Yeah.
is everything. And he tried to call the attention one time, two times, and mountain.
Hmm.
Just because, I don't know, the co-pilot did not punch the pilot from the
Yeah.
seat away. So in this thing, the question is mostly this. It's okay, you have people in some cultures that regard, because of the cultural traits of their culture, sometimes they don't are not able to say no or to be explicit regarding something that might be critical and that is happening as we see it, right?
Hmm.
Have you had some of these cases, and if yes, how do you handle with those, or if you didn't have, what would be your advice on these
Yeah.
kind of situations?
I did it. That's related with the psychological safety, right? So for instance, with my Chinese team member, I realized that in some of our all hands meetings with 40 people, the majority Americans, he would not speak
Yeah.
because it's 10 p.m. and his English is not fluent. So at the beginning, I haven't asked him to present anything, but as the time passed by, um, I spoke with him and I said, it's quite relevant for you to be present and to show your perspective that is so different from others in our team meetings. And so I was inviting him, but I was not telling him you need to do this or that. So you need to work candidly, because these are very these are situations that people, they have been living like that forever. So you cannot go as a manager or as a peer and try to change from one day to another how people will behave. So I did this kind of, do you want to come? Right? It's kind of, I give my hand, do you want to come? And he kind of understood, okay, it's not the time yet. So later, I said to him, look, I'm going to present this. You've been engaged. Can you present it with me? Okay, so I'm giving him the opportunity to be at the same time as I am. And at the same time, hey, we have some coaching English classes. I think that that can benefit you, make you feel more comfortable. Do you want to go to that? But I only put that after I have gained his trust. Because if you say to someone that you're not, from a manager perspective, if you say, oh, you should take a training on this or that, that can be perceived as, oh, you're not performing well. So first you need to gain trust and confidence, and that happens also with peer relations, and then you can make comments and you can make suggestions, and then celebrate, right? So for instance, he did his first presentation by himself almost 1 year after he joined the team 2 weeks ago, and it was not brilliant. It was not brilliant, but when he asked me how was it, I said it was great, thanks so much. And then I waited for another few days, and in our day, it was really great. But you can do even better, because this you can do like this, and next time maybe you can call me, and so you're dealing with that person. And if you ask me to summarize, is whatever the situation is, handle with care, put yourself on others' feet, and respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respect.
That's a good recipe. Now, going from, I think there's always this kind of, when people discuss these topics about cultural differences and etc. I think that there's a tendency, which I think it's natural due to, well, mutual respect and tolerance, that tries to put things in a brighter mood, say always good, etc., etc. But there are sometimes when things are also a bit dark, I believe. And the thing that I was thinking about, it's okay, what do you do when in a multicultural, remote in this case context, there are people that, okay, these guys are not, or these guys, something wrong is here and is really being an asshole, and probably is, well, can be having a bad time in his life, etc., etc., etc. But the question is, but you have to do something about it, and you can go from there, okay, bye, I fire you, to
Yeah.
that's always an option, right? Obviously, I would not say that it should be the first one, but what you do in this kind of situations, and mostly when you have, because you have cultures that have this thing about going on top of the other cultures. For example, you
Yeah.
go for an American guy, and the guy, as well intentioned as he might be, people from other cultures, from some more humble cultures or low
Hmm.
key cultures, can feel overwhelmed by, oh fuck, I'm completely aware. Or if you have someone from, I don't know, Netherlands, completely objective and assertive and says things as they are, brute as it might be, but in his mind that's completely irregular. And someone from a more context-based communication, subtitles and etc., just use that and say, but this guy is crazy, man. And
It's funny that you used the Netherlands example, because I reported today a situation with a Dutch colleague to my manager that is recurrent, and he's a jerk. Um, so, so and I can tell you that. So he's very uh, condescendent. He likes to have an opinion on everything, and he's kind of rude. And this is not our culture in a company. So when the things started to come, and he comes directly to me, because I'm a female, I'm from a southern European country, so it's this kind of thing. And he tries to teach me how I can do my job. And the first couple of times I always try to see people with a positive view. And my first reaction is, if you have someone that somehow is bullying you, or one of your team members, first and foremost, try the first assumption is they have a positive intention, or they do not have a negative intention.
yeah,
Right? Sometimes it's just their habit. But if it hurts, just go and talk. And for instance, with this guy, I've talked with him a couple of times in private, pinged him and say, "Hey, Christopher, I didn't like the email that you sent me this, because it seemed that you were telling me that I don't know how to do my job." And just being very vocal about it and talk directly helped him to understand, oh, it was not my intention. Sorry. Okay. I said, okay, good. Oh, no, Larry, you did an amazing work. Sugar coated, everything went on. And then he came again with another situation, and he keeps coming. And now he's doing this with some of my team members. And I'm like a lioness with cubs. So if you're touching me, it's bad. But if you're touching one of my cubs, you're done. So you try by talking. It's always, so my first approach is assume positive intent. My second one is talk openly. Don't be afraid. And you need to be brave. And once again, this is only possible if you know that your manager is backing up you, Sometimes if you're not comfortable, just speak with other team members and try to understand if it's something just with you or if it is a behavior that is all across the board. Because if it is a behavior, usually these kind of things in the professional world, they are not personalized. They are for a group of people. So sometimes if you're not feeling strong enough, you may have a colleague that may help you with this conversation, okay, or your manager if you feel comfortable. And the next one is, if it doesn't work, is go to that person's manager.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And the last one is report to HR. And and no need um, to sugarcoat. If this is a bullying, this needs to be reported. No one deserves, in any culture, in global organizations, in remote teams, to be bullied by one culture against the other. So, first, positive intent. Second, speak with the individual together
And then,
alone. Third, manager. Fourth, HR.
yeah, so just basically be professional about and adult
Yeah.
about the thing. But this is we're talking about dark situations regarding bullying in multicultural remote contexts. And let's try to focus
Mhm.
on that. But you can have the other way around. Someone who's basically, can be a great professional in technical terms and stuff like that, but is the guy that puts himself or herself in the position to, well, not be accounted for in the team. So it's the absence of, well, at least a medium level personality that makes him be a part of the team. So it's kind of, when I don't know if this is from people that come from cultures that have a huge hierarchical effect,
Mhm.
for example. But have you passed through that situation, trying to sell something, like you told about the episode with the Chinese
Mhm.
colleague? But that seems more, I don't know. It didn't seem someone that was, well, aware of what he was doing. I don't know if I'm making the question completely clear, but okay, you have the bullying, you have the arrogance, you have
Mhm.
bad behavior that abuses on purpose or not, and you might have the other way around. People who are always
Yeah.
putting themselves in positions that they should not do that.
Yeah. I have one of my Indian team members. He used to be a manager, and he moved into my team in senior level, but has an individual contributor. And one of the things that I realized in the beginning was that everything that I said, he never questioned, because I am the leader. And so I had to, first of all, I needed to understand, is he not saying anything because he doesn't have any ideas or even opinions and I did a bad job? Or is this something that is related with his culture? And so in private, because you don't like to expose these kind of things in a team meeting with 10 people or so, in private, I made very clear questions on, hey, Shish, can you please give me what is your opinion on it? And he started to reply using my words and just saying the same. No, Shish, sorry, I didn't want you to repeat. I really want you to tell me what is your opinion. If I was not here and you were the boss, what would you say? And the first 2 or 3 times he didn't get it, and I said, look, just because I'm your manager, I don't know everything, so I really want you to contribute. And if you're not feeling comfortable of doing this outside in a meeting with other team members, at least when we're just the two, feel free to tell me whatever you feel that you should tell me. And I opened a Pandora box because he has lots of ideas. Okay. So, but it's about respect, right? It's about, and not being afraid of putting yourself in the most vulnerable position and tell the others, okay, let's pretend you're me. What would you do? If you would do exactly what I'm doing, that's not what we want, right? Let's try to do some differentiate and take it lightly. Don't make it in a formal way. Don't
Yeah.
um There was something that I used to do when I was working face to face with people, and now I needed to readjust with my team members. That is having hard conversations. So when I needed to share something that was hard to deal with, I used to go for a walking one-on-one. So we went out of the office and we walked. And the reason why I did this was because when you're walking, usually you're walking side by side. So you're not looking face to face, right? If you're in a meeting room, you're looking face to face. So sometimes in remote, if I feel that the message that I'm passing is too strong and I don't want to be facing the individual, what I do is I find a nice excuse to turn off the video, or I put something on the screen so the screen is the focus and not me, and we are not looking to each other. And that makes it easier because in some cultures, looking to each other can be quite offensive or aggressive. So you may think as well, video is good, but sometimes just, oh, let me share with you my ideas, right? You have something screen sharing and you use that as a way to distract.
That's a very interesting perspective, because this thing about always be facing, directly someone, and in this Zoom times that we have lived in the last 2 years. Well, I think first, as we were talking before in the beginning of the conversation, people are tired of some other people, but also of us, looking always at
Yeah,
us, and
I'm trying to look at you and not to me. Gosh, my hair and so now I'm just looking at you.
Well, let's finish here. 1 hour has passed of
Yeah,
an interesting conversation. Lara, thank a lot once again
thanks
for
very
being
much.
with us and sharing your experience and your knowledge, your interesting knowledge and experience with our audience. This obviously is not just a webinar that has happened here. This will be is recorded and will be available for other people to also be able to share it. Thanks to all the people that were in the audience today. If you think that you have something to talk or to discuss, please, you can come back to us Landing.Jobs, and we'll be sure to convey your questions to Lara or connect with Lara or me in
Mm.
LinkedIn. We are available for anything we can do to clarify what you might have, and we hope to see you again in future sessions of Landing.Jobs webinars. And go remote and be tolerant,
Yes.
well, most of all. And just to finish, when this sentence has been from the beginning of this conversation, it was a saying that is attributed to Steven Seagal. I have some doubts, which is assumptions are the mother of all fuck ups, in those movies that the guy did. And I think it's always applied for a lot of things regarding culture, not necessarily culture in remote environments, even for physical, but assumptions usually are really the mother of all fuck ups when it comes to professional and personal situations. So have a great day, Lara. Thank you
Thank you.
once
Thank you, guys.
again. It's always good to have you. See you next time. Have a great rest of the day, a great week, a great year. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.